Last time on Rise of the Soul Queen, Zoe vanished, the room panicked, and David snapped. Thomas smiled, too calm, too ready. David's fists blazed gold. "What have you done with the child?" But it wasn't Thomas, not this time. Zoe had found something else. A glow, a presence, a visitor. She stepped through light, radiant, serene, eyes ancient. Her name? Lily, the water guardian. And when the warning came, they followed me. David took his stance. Talia drew her blade. Thomas summoned fire. Lily called the tide. The door crashed in. David gave the order. Protect the Seryn at all costs. Welcome to episode 9. The battle begins. The line drawn in the dust. The room held its breath. Outside, headlights cut across the boarded windows like searchlights in a war zone. Dust floated in the air, illuminated by the beams pouring through the cracks in the frame. The hum of engines, voices, movement. They were surrounded. At the front of the room, the four stood shoulder to shoulder, the guardians. David's hand hovered close to his sides, eyes sharp with memory and instinct. The glow around him was golden, pulsing faintly beneath his skin, a quiet storm waiting to be called. Beside him, Talia's blade was ready, half drawn, the red heat of her power licking up her arms like living flame. Her stance was low and ready, eyes burning with purpose. There was no fear in her, only calculation, readiness. Thomas, ever the shadow, let the deep violet energy curl around his fingers. It moved like smoke, like thought, like something ancient. His face was calm, but his body was ready, as if the next move had already been made 3 moves ago. And Lily? She stood with one arm slightly extended, water drawn from the air itself dancing in soft threads around her wrists. Blue light shimmered against her skin, her presence serene but unshakable, like the ocean at dawn before the storm hits. Behind them, the teens clustered close together. Wide-eyed, breath shallowed, hearts pounding like war drums. Emily's hand trembled slightly, though she held it at her side. Her eyes tracked each of the guardians, the way they moved, the way they braced, the way they seemed to already know what was coming. Tracking back to her uncle often, amazed, stunned, and fascinated by this new version of the man she loved and admired so much. Kat's breath came fast, not from fear, from fire, from something inside her that had ignited. Her hands flexed open and closed at her sides, her feet shifting like she was ready to run headlong into the light just to see who dared to show up. Her hair framed her face like a crown of shadows in rebellion, and her grin was almost feral. "I don't know what's about to happen," she whispered to Zoe, "but I wanted to." Zoe blinked at her, stunned. "You're actually enjoying this." "Maybe," Kat murmured, fire glinting in her eyes. "Feels like I'm supposed to." Just to the right, Andrew stood like a pillar, still, hands clenched, heat radiating off of him in quiet waves, his jaw locked, eyes fixed. His fists burned against his palms, sweating, restless. Whatever laid within him was trying to rise. He wasn't sure how to let it, but his body was ready, his heart already in the fight. "You think they need help?" he muttered to anyone who was listening. Brian stayed close to Logan, watching Thomas, waiting, always watching. And Logan, steady, silent. He adjusted his glasses and stepped quietly behind Andrew. No response, just safety. His arms half out like he might catch someone if they fell. His eyes never left the door. There was a breeze around him that hadn't come from any window. It whispered something only he could hear. Then a single sound. Footsteps. Crunching gravel, slow, steady, getting closer. David raised his hand, palm out. Everyone froze. Another step. Then another. Outside the door, the shadows shifted, just enough for the light to catch the outline of something approaching. David's voice was low but unwavering. "Whatever's coming, they're not getting past us." And in unison, as if called by fate itself, the guardians light up. Gold, red, blue, violet. The line was drawn, and the fight was about to begin. The footsteps echoed against the concrete, steady and unhurried. From the shadows of the dust-filled doorway emerged a tall woman, dressed in a sleek, high-grade, tactical black government-issued suit, but elevated. Her coat flowed as she moved, fitted but functional, and her dark sunglasses veiled her gaze. There was an elegance to her, but the kind forged in steel, not silk. She paused just inside the threshold, the chaos behind her ignored. The light caught on the edge of her badge clipped near her collarbone. Though its symbol was unfamiliar, it screamed authority. Her gaze settled on the group before her. 4 guardians standing firm, their energies pulsing in the air, and the teens just behind them. Thomas let out a slow puff of breath, arms relaxing just slightly as he recognized her. "Director," he muttered. She nodded coolly, tone sharp and precise. "Thomas, you've disappointed us." Thomas tilted his head, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "It's a pleasure to disappoint." The woman's lip curled faintly, not quite a smile. Her sunglasses turned toward the others. Her gaze lingered on David. "A soul? We weren't expecting to see a soul this far from the old line," she murmured, voice quiet but cutting. Then she stopped. Her head shifted slightly, as though sensing something just outside the physical. Her eyes swept across the teens. They landed on Emily. The sunglasses came off, and now the smile was real, slow, amused, dangerous. "The Syria," she said softly, savoring it. How perfect. With the calm precision of a trained operative, she removes her sunglasses, folded them neatly, and slipped them into her coat pocket. Her gaze lands on David. "Soul Guardian, then?" She takes in the room, the protective stance, the teens behind them, the unmistakable glow of awakening power. Her eyes settle on Emily, and a slow, knowing smile curves into a grin. "We have the Seryn and the Queen?" "The Order will be pleased," she pauses. "The only question is, now, how difficult do you want this to be?" David didn't take his eyes off the woman. His shoulders squared slightly, the glow beneath his skin pulsing once in quiet warning. Without looking away, he murmured to Thomas, "You know her?" Thomas exhaled. "She represents interested parties." The woman let out a smooth, disdainful laugh. "Seems you've changed allegiances, Thomas." Thomas steps forward, calm and unflinching. "I haven't changed anything. I stand with my Seryn, always have, always will." The woman tilted her head, considering Thomas's stance. A flicker of amusement danced in her gaze. "Very well," she said, her voice low and sure. She grinned and then exploded forward in a crackling surge of power. A burst of purple arcane energy flared from her palms, slamming into the ground with pinpoint precision. The impact sent Thomas and Talia flying, flattening instantly with enough force to keep them down, but not harm them fatally. It was intentional, a flex, a warning. She turned slowly, savoring the tension, her long coat billowing as she drew her hands together and summoned a pulse sphere of energy. The arcane glow spinning tighter and brighter, her eyes lifting. She caught David's glare with defiant spark and fired. The energy blast hit him in full force. David's body arched as the wave tore through him. It burned, it clawed, the searing pain of arcane fire and electricity intertwined like acid laced with lightning. He crumbled into the ground, gasping, stunned. It had been a long time since he'd felt that kind of power, that specific frequency of magic. A sharp breath escaped him as the memory returned. The arcane. It all came back to him in this one moment. He looked up at her, eyes narrowed in recognition. Then his jaw tightened. David growled low in his throat, something old, something primal, words in a language long buried. He stretched one hand toward the sky, fingers spread, his eyes ignited, glowing with molten gold. Thomas, still on the ground, watched. David met his gaze, and something passed between them. Thomas smiled, nodded. A grin tugged at David's lips. Then David rose. A beam of fire gold light sliced through the clouds above as if summoned by divine will. It slammed into David's hand, spiraling around him in a furious cyclone of heat and flame. He reared back, let out a battle cry that shook the ground, and hurled the flare of pure energy at the woman. She didn't flinch. She stood her ground, smirking, arms raised to brace herself. But then Thomas moved. He shot forward, leaping directly into the path of David's golden fire. His eyes flared a deep, pulsing violet. Arcane energy surged from his chest and wrapped around the firelight, lacing it with purple electricity until the whole thing transformed, twisting into a swirling, glowing storm of combined power. The woman's eyes widened. "No," she whispered. Then flash. The impact hit her, and everything behind her, the unknown vehicles, the strange soldiers, all of it was swallowed in the brilliant pulse of light that flattened everything in its radius. Smoke and sparks shot into the air. Thomas dropped to the ground, landing hard on his knees as smoke curled from his singed clothes. He panted, wiping soot from his brow. David strode toward him, slower now, still glowing faintly with gold. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough but steady. Thomas nodded, standing as he dusted himself off. "Yeah, it's been a while since we pulled that one off." David chuckled, the sound full of warmth and memory. "I hadn't forgotten." "Not anymore." His eyes lingered on Thomas, not just a fellow fighter, but something older, trusted, bonded, a guardian, his friend. He turned toward the teens, then found Lily's gaze. His expression hardened. "We don't have much time," he said. "Can you get us out of here?" Lily nodded, breath tight. Around them, the sounds of groaning and movement stirred, the dazed recovery of those caught in the blast's radius. She pivoted toward the back of the group, hands already glowing as she murmured something under her breath. Dade and Thomas stayed where they were, eyes locked on the smoking debris ahead, scanning for any sign of movement. The crackling air hummed with tension. Talia moved quickly, checking on the teens. "Everyone all right?" she asked, touching Kat's shoulder, then Zoe's. Her gaze swept over them, landing on Emily. "Are you okay?" Emily nods. They were all wide-eyed, breathless, running purely on adrenaline. "That was insane," Kat whispered, still holding Zoe's arm. "No kidding," Brian muttered, glancing at the scorched landscape. "That was crazy. Was that magic?" "All right, now move," Talia said, already guiding them toward Lily. "We don't have time." Lily raised both hands now, her fingers tracing a complex pattern midair. A brilliant blue glow flared outward, widening into a swirling portal that shimmered like liquid sapphire. It pulsed, beckoning them. "Go," Talia ordered. "Wait," Logan protested. "Where are we even going?" "Just go," Talia snapped, her tone sharper than usual. Emily turned, fear flashing in her eyes. "What about Uncle David?" Talia hesitated for a moment, just for a breath. "He's right behind us. Now move." One by one, the teens darted into the portal. Emily was the last, giving one final look over her shoulder before disappearing into the swirling blue light. From the blast zone, a figure emerged, the woman. She climbed out of a crater, her coat torn, smoke rising from her shoulders. She coughed, brushing off debris, and lifted her gaze with venom burning in her eyes. Thomas tilted his head and chuckled. Ooh, she's mad. David smirked. Yeah, we should go. As more silhouettes began to emerge behind her, armed, moving fast, David and Thomas backed toward the portal. At the last second, David turned, scooped Lily into his arms without hesitation, and leapt into the vortex just as the enemy fire lit the ground behind them. They tumbled through the portal and landed in a heap on the floor on the other side. Gravel, dust, cool air, silence. David groaned, then realized Lily was beneath him. She blinked up at him, dazed but smiling softly. "Thanks for the lift," she whispered. David coughed, a sheepish grin on his face. Behind them, Talia stood with arms crossed, her eyes sharp and unimpressed. "Really?" she says. He cleared his throat and stood quickly, helping Lily on her feet. "Oh, we made it, didn't we?" "Barely," Talia muttered. David turned, surveying their new surroundings. They were in the middle of what looked like an abandoned railway depot, half industrial, half mystical. Steel arches, weathered concrete, overgrown ivy creeping across old loading bays. But they weren't alone. A group was approaching, slowly, cautiously. Some wore military uniforms, others were dressed in sleek suits, their presence cold, authority radiating from them. David squared his shoulders, sighing. Oh great, now what? A sound cut through the stillness, footsteps against the cracked floor. A man emerged from the gathering mist, flanked by what looked like a small battalion. Soldiers parted from him like a wave folding in on itself, clearing his path with reverent precision. He was tall, broad shoulders, somewhere in his 40s. His salt and pepper hair was cut clean and sharp. The lines on his face didn't weather him. They carved him into something more striking, commanding, controlled. His suit was immaculate, not military, something custom, sleek, expensive. Every step he took radiated power without effort. David tensed, eyes narrowing. His hands hovered at his side, instinct coiled like a spring. Thomas stepped forward, placing a firm hand on David's shoulder. "Wait." The man stopped a few feet from them and offered a slow, easy smile. "Well, hello," he said, his voice smooth and assured. He folded his arms. "I'm Keith Dalton. Please call me Keith." David didn't move. Keith extended a hand. There was a quiet pause, then David finally stepped forward and took it. Their handshake was slow, cautious. Talia and Lily flanked the teens, watching every movement with suspicion. Logan's eyes widened. "Wait a second," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "That's Keith Dalton. He's the CEO of KDI Tech. The quantum AI pioneer guy, that guy. He's like a rock star in the science world." David turned slightly towards Logan, then looked back at the man in front of him. "You're that Keith Dalton?" Keith offered a modest nod. "One and the same." He stepped slightly past David, moving closer to the teens. Talia shifted instantly, stepping between them, her eyes locked on Keith's with no intention of letting him pass. "Not another step," she warned. Keith paused, hands up in peace. "It's all right," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I've been waiting for you." "Who the hell are you?" Talia snapped. He gave her that smile, calm, knowing, but before he could answer, Logan practically burst out of his skin. "Who is he? He's Keith Dalton," he blurted. "I've read every paper, watched every keynote. He's like the Michael Jordan of quantum biology. This is wild." Keith chuckled, amused. "You flatter me." He turned to Logan, extended his hand once more. Logan stepped past Talia before she could stop him, grasping Keith's hand in an enthusiastic shake. "I'm Logan. I'm a huge fan," he gushed. Keith held onto his hand for a moment longer, locking eyes with him. "I see," Keith said with a warm nod. "But you're so much more than a fan, my young friend." Keith stepped back, his gaze sweeping across the teens, then to the Guardians. "I'm Keith Dalton," he said, letting the weight of the words settle. "And I am the Air Guardian." David stiffened. Talia blinked. Keith turned back to Logan. "And you," he smiled again. "You are my Seryn." The silence was instant and full. Thomas smirked, leaning in toward David. "I told you. You had no idea." David's breath caught. He turned back to the teens, each of them still catching their breath, looking around, trying to make sense of what just happened. He looked at Emily, his niece, at Kat, still bristling with defiance, at Brian, haunted and quiet, at Zoe, protective and sharp, at Logan, glowing with awe, and at Andrew, calm but unreadable. He blinked, then realized, suddenly remembering, the signs, the patterns, the power. He whispered it before he knew he had. "My God, the Tua."